So, programmers use databases as a tool to store and organize our persistent data within tables. This means that your data is stored on non-volatile medians, such as a hard drive. And even when the computer is off, the data is still intact. And as programmers, our programs utilize databases for scenarios such as storing user information from web forms, looking up inventory, or updating information that websites display. But how do we actually interact with our database? Or what do we use to read, store, delete, and update our data within these database tables? Well, the answer is that we use a special type of database language, which interacts directly with our database tables. Its name is Structured Query Language, or what I refer to it as SQL. Now, SQL, or SQL, isn't a programming language, but instead, it's a language that provides a standard set of commands to retrieve and manipulate data from a variety of database management systems. For the purpose of CS50, we'll go over 4 basic commands: select, insert, update, and delete. Furthermore, we'll utilize a database web interface called phpMyAdmin, which is installed on the appliance to write out SQL statements. So, to help you remember these commands, I've brought some cupcakes in a cupboard to assist with our scenarios. Say you have a cupcakes database where you store all information about your cupcakes. Now, databases can contain many tables, and the tables themselves can contain many columns. Inside our cupcakes database, we have a table called cupcake_cupboard. This table will be used to store all information about cupcakes that are, well, in your cupboard. The columns that are inside your table represent the attributes of a cupcake. For example, the cupcake cupboard's columns are cake ID, cake type, cake color, and cake is nice, which this Boolean typed column is used to determine if the cake is nice or not nice. We're going to start with writing a select statement. Select statements are used to retrieve data from a particular database table. In this scenario, we want to know everything about all cupcakes that exist in our cupboard. The syntax to do this is select space star or asterisk space from space our table, which is a cupcake cupboard or cupcake_cupboard. Let's go ahead and execute that. As we can see, these are all the cupcakes in our cupboard. It's important to note that star or asterisk is a wildcard character that denotes the gathering of all the columns of some table. Normally, we can access a specific column or columns by replacing the star with the actual column name. If we want multiple columns, but not all, we can achieve this by writing the column names delimiting each column by a comma. For example, let's only retrieve the cake ID and cake type in the cupcake_cupboard table. The syntax to do this is select space cake ID, comma, cake type, space, from our table, cupcake_cupboard. Let's go ahead and execute this. And here, we now only have the 2 columns we specified for each cupcake in our cupboard. We can also refine our query results by specifying the where clause just after the table name. For example, there appears to be a cupcake in our cupboard that is, well, not so nice looking. Let's figure out all the cupcakes in our cupboard that are, well, not so nice looking using the where clause. The syntax to do this is select space star space from space cupcake_cupboard space where space our conditional column, in this case cake is nice space equal sign and the Boolean value of false. It is important to note that if you are using strings, you must enclose it in single quotes. This is true for all strings in SQL, or in SQL database terms, variant characters known as varchar data type. In this case, we are using true or false, which is a Boolean value and not a string. Let's go ahead and execute this command. Lo and behold, it is the case that we have one chocolate, not so nice cupcake in our cupboard. Next, we're going to write an insert statement. Insert statements are used to insert or add additional rows of data into your database table. Revisiting our scenario, let's assume that we've just made a brand new cupcake. Since we are very organized cupcake eaters, we're going to have to insert this new cupcake in our cupcake_cupboard table. The syntax to do this is this. Insert space into space our table cupcake_cupboard space followed by open paren, and here we specify the column's names delimited by a comma. Cake type, comma, cake color, comma, cake is nice, close paren, space. Following this, we write the word values, space, open paren, and here we enter the value for each column respectively, also delimited by a comma. Single quote, because these are all varchar values, we'll surround them in single quotes. Peanut butter, single quote, comma, single quote, light brown, single quote, comma, true. Now, it's important to give each row a unique number to identify itself. Auto-incrementing a column provides this as a no two of the same IDs can ever exist in this table. Let's go ahead and execute. There we go, all organized. The next SQL statement that we will write is an update statement. The update statement can be used to modify data within a column for any existing row in your database table. Early in our scenario, using a select statement, we identified a cupcake within our cupcake cupboards table whose cake is nice value was false. But let's assume while our peanut butter cupcake was in the oven, we made our not so nice cupcake very nice. Being so exceptionally organized, we want our cupcake to reflect this value in our cupcake_cupboard table. Therefore, let's update our chocolate cupcake in the database to reflect this. The syntax is update space our table cupcake_cupboard space the word set space the column that we wish to change, cake is nice, $, then here we place our new value, true, space. Now, because we don't want to update all rows with this value, we want to provide a where clause that will pinpoint us to the exact row that we want to modify. In this case, we know that there is only one cupcake that has a cake is nice value of false. Furthermore, we will also ensure that we are updating the correct row by using the AND clause. We use the AND clause to refine our query further. In this case, because we know that the cupcake is chocolate, we will use this cake type column. Where space our conditional column, cake is nice, space, $, false, and space cake type, $, single quote, chocolate, single quote. So putting it all together, this update statement says find all the cupcakes in our cupcake cupboard. And if there is a cupcake whose columns cake is nice contains the value false and cake type contains the value of chocolate, we want to update this specific row's cake is nice value to true. So let's go ahead and execute the statement. And now we're organized. All this talk of cupcakes has made me a bit hungry. I think I should help myself to one. But if I actually eat this cupcake, I should at least also remove its existence from our cupcake_cupboard table. To do this, we will use the delete statement. The delete statement can be used to remove all or some rows from a table. If you wish to remove some specific row from a table, then you must provide a where clause, thus specifying a column that should be unique to the row you wish to remove. This is the syntax. Delete space from space our table cupcake_cupboard space. Now, at this point, whenever you are this far in your delete statement, you want to be very careful. For example, if I were to run this query as is without providing some where clause, I would lose all the data in this cupcake_cupboard table. But because I already know that my cake IDs are unique, I'll use the red velvet cake ID for my where clause. Where space our column cake ID equals sign the number 1. Because this is an integer value, there is no need to surround it in single quotes. So let's execute the statement. Well, now that we've wiped the existence of this cupcake from our cupcake_covered table, we only have one thing left. Make it disappear. I'm Christopher Bartholomew. This is CS50.